One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
So the plan for today, we are going to paint this odd-looking creature. A lot of the old school Dungeons and Dragons stuff that was, of course, the moment we start, we're going to get interrupted. I apologize for that. The dog walkers have just showed up to take my dog out of the studio. Okay, now here we go again. Sorry about that. They were supposed to come at 1:45. It just didn't work out. But it's all good. The dog is always very happy when she gets to have multiple walks in a day. I had her out for the walk earlier, and now she's out again. All right, so yeah, old school D&D miniatures. Like the old psionic stuff from the first edition of D&D had some weird stuff in it. There was one called the Intellect Devourer, which has kind of made it into modern games and stuff. There was one called the Thought Eater that was basically microscopic, and it got in your bloodstream and went through your brain and ate your brain. And it looked a bit like a crocodile, but so I'm not really sure what this is, from what game it comes. It basically looks like crab legs with feathers on the end, stuck on our brain, and it's really creepy. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with that. So the plan for today is we're not going to do anything super complicated. We're going to give it... Oh, well, there you go. Right on. So the plan for this guy, nothing super complicated, okay? We're going to basically use a creepy bluish color, which is going to be deep ocean. All right, and we're going to use that as like the shadow color under the brain. It'll also be under some of the limbs and in the little feathery bits. And then on the feathery bits, I was going to make them sort of pink and highlight them white, so they look a bit like arthropod gills. That's the general idea. Okay, and then, or maybe pink highlighted with blue. I haven't decided yet. We'll see how I feel about it when the time comes. But we're doing weird colors today. Yeah, brains, exactly. Weird brain colors. And then we'll do a shadow of deep ocean on the brain. A first highlight, I think, with royal purple. And then we're going to highlight with amethyst purple, breast cancer awareness pink, and rosy skin on the brain, which just sounds weird, and I've done that before, and it looks warm, fleshy, but also kind of gray, especially if you then use like a light blue like this on top to kind of do some final highlighting. It gives it a weird gray matter look with purple undertones. So that's kind of what we're going for, and it's not a complicated mini. So I'm not really sure how long this is going to take to paint. The last time I did a brain, I did going down memory lane here, but as I recall, I did a brain on a mind flayer, and you could see the mind flayer's brain through the skin, and that was kind of a weird project. I don't know if I could ever even find that thing again. No, almost certainly not. Let's give it a 2-second try. Let's give it a 2-second try. You never know. there's so many different miniature projects that sometimes it's quite hard to find things that you did. Oh, we might be in luck. We might be in luck. Here we go. Is that him? Oh, that's him. I don't know if it's gonna work very well. Yeah, that doesn't look too horrible. I'll show you that photo. So this is a mind flare from Reaper, a battalion they call them in Reaper parlance, and it's not the top end paint job of all paint jobs, but the idea was to paint it as though you could see the brain showing through this translucent skin. And some of the highlighting is the brain matter. Some of the highlighting is the shape of his head. And the photo doesn't really capture it all that well, but this is the sort of color schemes that we're going for today. Purples and pinks and a bit of a grayish look in our brain matter. All right, let's get back into it. So let's get those paints out in the palette. Anywhere that I need a liner paint, I'm going to use black indigo. So I'm going to put a little bit of black indigo on the palette. And normally I would add that later, but if we add it now, it's going to pick up some water and get thinner, and we're going to need it to be fairly thin if we use it as a lining paint. We'll need quite a bit of this deep ocean blue. Oh, you see my palette? No, you don't. Look at that. Just see a dirty bucket of water. There we go. There's the palette. Perfect. Perfect. Let's see how we do in the palette today. So there's our black indigo, our deep ocean. We're going to put royal purple. Royal purple is a weird purple from Reaper because it separates very, very quickly into purple and red components. And it has as a result, there's some funny things that happen when you use it as a glaze. And I like that weird sort of look when I'm painting with these kinds of colors and this type of subject. Breast cancer pink, don't need a huge amount of that. Amethyst purple. Frosty blue. The frosty blue basically is just any high value blue. So a very light blue with a lot of white filler. And the reason for that is we're going to possibly use that as a highlight color in a few spots. And we're going to warm some areas up with some rosy skin tone. And we will need some pure white to lighten things as we go. So this is the plan. That's funny. I did a lot of cleaning in the studio today. And now I don't know if you can hear that, but my whole chair squeaks whenever I move, which it normally doesn't do. I think I moved the chair around too much today. All right, so let's get our view back. There we are. There's our happy little palette on the palette cam. There's our happy little painter on the painter cam. And it's got happy coffee to stay awake for the whole class. And we're ready to go. I'm just going to let this turtle sneak on there for a moment. I've been working on that this morning. All right, let's get painting. So we're going to start with the blue ocean. And this is going to be our shadow color in a lot of places. So the general idea I'm looking for with this is to paint it on the bottom of just about everything. So let's start on the legs. I'm just going to start kind of in the middle of the body, and I'm pulling downwards to pull this color into the recesses. Now, if your miniature is painted all black, you might find that this color doesn't show up very well. And you might need to do a couple of coats of this. This particular one that I started with, I zenithaled it with a light gray first through the airbrush. That's mostly so that I can see it a little bit more clearly on the camera. But it just occurred to me that in this particular case, it might be more difficult to paint it if you're starting straight from black. But we'll do a couple of good coats of this blue really across the whole bottom of the figure. Now when you're doing this sort of weird alien or sort of eldritch horror type stuff, I find that the usual color theory rules don't apply so much. Or it's not that much that don't apply in the sense of like complementary colors and all those sorts of things. It's more in the sense of color dissonance. And there's some colors that just really work well together, that work right together. And if you want to give your figure a sort of alien feeling, sometimes it's worthwhile to deliberately choose colors that are not going to work well together from a sort of a color harmony perspective. Colors that make you kind of think, ugh, that's sort of gross. Now I'm just noticing that this miniature is actually quite difficult to paint the middle part of it. It's interesting. Almost might have been easier to paint him before he was stuck onto the base. In the case of this particular mini, that's too late. He's on there. A little bit of sub-assembly might have been helpful. Too late now. So just kind of slapping the blue on there. Right on. Looks like we do have a few people following on Discord. No, sorry, on Twitch as well. Is anybody besides me watching the Twitch stream? I mean, from the moderator side, is anybody else watching the Twitch stream? You are? Okay, thanks, Heather. Then I will ignore that. If there's a person on there watching who was just asking a question or saying hello, if they ask any questions about the painting, if you wouldn't mind, just let me know in this channel as well. Thanks, Heather. All right, and I'm going to paint the bottom half of this brain blue as well. Brain. Actually a pretty simple sort of paint job today. This could go very quickly. Simple paint job on a simple mini. What could possibly go wrong and take a lot of time? I have a feeling I know already. It's going to happen when the brains don't look brainy enough. But that's all right. We have plans for if the brains don't look brainy enough. We all have to have our own definitions, I think, of what brainy enough looks like. All right, so there we go. I'll need to let that dry for a moment. But instead of waiting for it to dry, I'm going to start painting this royal purple color on the top half of the brain. And if it gets into this stuff which is already wet, it doesn't matter. Just kind of like wiggle your brush so that the purple and the blue get mixed. And I mean, that's oh, right on, that's working. Who is it? Bell the cat has just told me that he's using, he put a pin in the bottom of the mini to make it easier to access in between the legs there. But so what I'm doing here, I'm just wiggling the tip of my brush where the edge of the wet paint is, and I'm wiggling the purple paint into the blue paint. And in some parts of the world they call that wet blending. For us, this is just laziness and letting the wet paints kind of overlap each other. So this is not deliberate. It's not like a deliberate wet blend, but it's okay if this looks kind of weird and creepy and messy. Creepy being the key phrase we're looking for. Focus is not the best. Let's fix that. So if there's the couple of people that are new that have joined us, should feel free to take a snapshot of your mini and drop it in the chat window. If you need help to find the chat, let me know. But you can stand by. All right. So yeah, if you want to just take a snapshot of your figure, you drop it in the chat, and we can have a little chat about it as we go along here. Sorry about that. I just had to chat with some folks who come into the studio. So yeah, we'll just kind of splat that purple on there. Give your brush tip a wiggle, and we'll call that blended. There we go. And if you don't want to just do half the brain, you can do the whole brain or more of the brain. Really up to you. I'm doing about 2/3 of this brain in this purple color. I'm sure that's a very strange, out of context comment for the folks who haven't been following along with the painting club. Paint your brains purple. There we go. All right, and now we can get on to, it's looking just about dry enough down in the bottom part. So let's do the first layer on these feathery gill-like things is how we're going to paint these. And I'm going to take a little bit of deep ocean, and I'm going to start with a gray color for those. So I'm going to get my gray by mixing the pink with the deep ocean, and that gives me this strange purpley looking gray. And I think I'm going to put a little bit of blue in there as well. Yeah, that's kind of what I was looking for. So we'll just paint the feathery shaped little feet here. Just paint them with lines of this color on the top. Don't paint the shadows at the bottom. We'll leave those a bit darker. We're just painting the, and I'm kind of ignoring that sculpted texture that's on there. I'm just painting lines of this gray over just these weird feet. Feet slash lungs slash, I don't really know what they are. I'm going to just say that they are breathing apparatus on the alien creature. And now I want to add some white to that, and we're going to lighten that up. And add a little bit more pink to it now. Get more of a pinky gray color. There we go. And so with this, the paint scheme, we don't have to be precise about it with anything. If you want to make yours more pink, more white, you go right ahead. And what I'm just going to put like little dots along the top of this feathery shape and paint like long, thin lines to make it look a bit like filaments. Okay, like it's little bits of filament is the word I'm looking for. It's almost like a palm frond, but it's like weird alien breathing stuff. Okay, and then the next step I'm going to do with this is I'm going to add a little bit more white, a little bit more pink, and I'm going to do it again over top of this. Why am I telling you that? Because I'm going to do this really quickly, and while you folks are doing another layer with a lighter color, a pinker color, a whiter color, I'm going to go chat with these folks briefly that are visiting the studio, and I'll be right back. All right, how's everybody doing with their brain painting? All right, as promised, I will now catch up to where you are. We'll do another layer of frilly pink stuff on these legs. Sorry, what was your last name, Duncan?
Gray.
Sorry, Gray?
Yeah.
Gray, right on. Yeah, because I'm going to tell the whole internet world out there that the guy who won Best Painted Figure at HalCon just came in to spend his gift certificate. Duncan Gray. So we're going to say congratulations to Duncan Gray on a beautifully painted figure that he entered. Yeah. Welcome on your first visit to the studio. There we go. So these things are starting to look kind of feathery and frilly, kind of like little. There we go. This is what we're looking for. Now, one of the tricks to make these look kind of like filaments, we've now got these thin lines over dark shadows, okay, which makes them appear sort of translucent. And we can also put some different colored ones in there if you like. You could put a few that are like few little lines that are just like straight pink. But the idea is that with each layer, the lines should get successively thinner and thinner. And that helps with that illusion of them being somewhat transparent. There are just some straight pink ones. I could do a few little blue ones as well. Add some more color in there. Alright, and now I'm going to do some that are just blue. I'm just going to grab straight blue. Actually, I put a little bit of white in the blue. My blue's a little bit darker than I expected. Just a little bit of white. And I'll put these as very thin lines over top of the other ones. And that color variation, as well as the progressively smaller lines, again gives that not just interesting color variety, but that impression of depth and volume in the little filamentous. I'm sure there's a technical anatomy term for it. I just don't remember what it is. Brachy something. Branchia? Long thin filaments of whatever. There, so now I've got my little weird feathery shapes. And I feel like now we want to do a bit more of kind of a pinkish gray. So I'm grab some more deep ocean. I'm going to add some pink into it. And this is going to be the gray for these like shell. Oh, right on. Creepy alien gills. I like it. Yeah, that's looking good. So these are going to be this blue-gray is going to be the highlight color for the fleshy bits of the legs. So I want to keep that deep ocean blue color that was underneath to really just, I just mix deep ocean and pink to make a gray. I'm keeping this on the upper parts of the skin. So what am I going to get by doing this? I'm going to get a blue shadow with this color. This color is effectively going to be the shadow color on the skin, because we're going to use the rosy skin to make this look more fleshy here in a moment. I know I had a plan when I started, but I feel like I'm changing it moment by moment as I paint this creepy alien thing. So where am I choosing to paint? So you see, like, I've kept the blue underneath. I'm starting on the upper part of these round shapes and leaving maybe the bottom 1/4 as blue and painting the upper 3/4 as this light gray color. And then anywhere that two surfaces meet, I'm leaving a blue line, a line of the blue ocean, to separate those shapes. And that's going to give us a well-defined, weird alien body. Things you have to say in painting classes, eh? Well-defined, weird alien body. There we go. Just realized that this could be a really fun one to do some wet blending on. Sorry, I've just got to turn the mic on for a sec. Hey, Canuck Wildling, that is looking good. You're making good progress. Yep, right on. Okay, so now I've got this blue-gray color coming up on the legs. I'm going to start adding skin tone, so rosy skin into that to make my sort of carapace color. Ooh, I just had a little funny idea for that. We could build up the color on the carapace by building it up as like, by building it up with dots. So we did this blue-gray color. So we could start putting little dots of this lighter pink color on areas higher up, and that's going to make it look like crab shell or lobster shell, like it's some sort of weird arthropod creature. Hey, right on. Looking good, Zypherius. So when you're doing a dot texture like this, we build up the highlight by making a few dots here and there, but then by building up a stronger concentrations of dots where you want the highlight to be. So in this case, we want the highlights on the top of these round shapes. We put more dots on the top. And it gives the illusion of a blend. See, I knew I'd find a way to slow this class down. There we go. Just keep putting lots of little dots. Oh, so part of the problem when you're doing dots is you don't want to have the paint flood. So I put way too much paint on just there, and I created a little flood, and that was more paint than I wanted. So how do we fix that? Well, we just let it dry, and then we can go back and put blue dots in the middle of those to break up the shape and make them smaller. There we go. Starting to look really alien. Do people have lobster for dumping day on the South Shore? Oh, yeah, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah. Where are you located there, Canuck Wildling? Chester, right on. I'm gonna guess that I think I know who you were when you bought that figure when you were here the other day. You guys were here for a painting class last weekend, right? Yep, right on. That was a fun painting class. I like it when we get kids for the painting classes. Sometimes we run the beginner painting workshops and we get like nobody, and then some days we get like 10 people and 5 kids, and that is just a blast. And your 2 kids were very focused. That was an impressive level of focus, actually. They did really well. You've got a couple of future army painters there for sure. Just remember, if they're in your family, you don't have to pay them a minimum wage. You can, they work in the family business, you can pay them less. Important things to know for business in Canada. So just making a bunch of dots on each separate shape. There. Now our shape's looking weird, which is what I wanted. So I think I'm going to take some rosy skin and just use straight rosy skin now. Nothing mixed into it. And I'm just going to put a few dots on higher spots. So like at the top of this little claw, put a few dots on the top of that, where the light would hit it the most. Now you don't really have to follow the rules of like highlighting when you're doing this. You can put the dots in slightly more random places if you like. Generally speaking, try to aim for where the light is going to hit the most. So what about the workflow? Like the why am I doing it in this way? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the body basically done. Okay, and then when we start working on the brain bit, I'm going to make sure that the top part of the brain stands out better than anything on the lower part of the body. So that's why the paints that we've used so far on this lower part of this brain creature have been relatively dark. Because what I intend to do is make the brain really, really bright. So there's no doubt about the brain being the main bit of this beast when I'm done. I kind of like that. I'm kind of happy with that. Okay, now the next bit is a little bit different probably from what you're used to. So we need to do a little bit of a demo sort of a thing. Now, let's grab a little brush. What's this? Winsor & Newton. All right. So normally when people highlight an object, okay, they tend to look for the top of it and put a highlight along, like a line of highlight along the top of the object. Okay. And then leave shadow on both sides of it. But what we want to do is, if you picture this as being one of the ripples of this brain shape, okay? So if that's this round brain shape, right, the little undulations and little valleys and rivers and things, I want the highlight not to be just in the center at the top of this. I want you to reach in with the brush all the way in to the main shape of this thing and make the highlight almost like a shelf on top of that bit of brain, like that. Okay, so it's not a little line, it's a big line that reaches all the way in to the depths of the fold of the skin. Okay, and that's going to make the thing look much more dramatic with those dark colors that we already painted. Okay, so what we're not going to do is paint. So here's our brain. We're not going to paint little lines along the middle of the brain shapes. What we're going to do is paint strong lines and reach right in to the fold like that. Okay, and you'll still have the shadow above that, but the highlighting when you look from above will be a lot, it'll appear a lot stronger. So we don't want to do this, we want to do that. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, but we're not doing that with this flesh tone. That was just to show you what we're doing. So I'm going to paint back over that with purple. Get rid of all that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do our first highlight on all of these shapes by taking some royal purple and mixing in a bit of pink. So the pink is both going to lighten the color and also shift it a little bit closer to red than to purple. It's still basically magenta, okay? And then all of these shapes get this sort of strong line of highlight. Now you don't want to go so deep that you paint it right over the whole shadow of the crevice there. But we do want to make sure that the whole upper surface of these little brain bits gets fully painted this color. Okay, and then just work your way around, and we're going to do this on all of the brain. Not just like on the middle or on the top, do all of it. And the pieces that were already blue colored at the bottom, this is almost the final color. But on the top of the brain, we're going to add more colors in a minute. Try to think about if a light was shining directly down on this from above, which side of each of these little canals would get the highlight. I know that's a weird thing to be thinking about, but this is one of those cases where if you were to dry brush this, you would not get highlights as strong as this, because the dry brushing doesn't reach down all the way along the surface that is normally exposed to the light. So you end up with highlights that are too... how do I handle it when a ridge on a brain makes a C shape? I basically choose whichever side is facing the top, and that's the side that I make the strong highlight on. If it like this one that I'm doing here, it goes from being light on this side, and if I follow that little tube around, it'd be light on the bottom. So I just do the top half of it, stop, and then follow the loop around, do the top half of the next whirl of it, and then the top half of the next bit, and just you can change from side to side. Just try to make sure you're always doing the top half of the shape. It doesn't have to be perfect, but this style of highlighting is going to give you much bigger, stronger highlights, and also more contrast with your shadows. So now as I look at this guy from the top, those are all quite visible. But look at the same shapes from the bottom, they're still very, very dark from below. And that's what we're going for. How's everybody making out there in painting land? Guys all good? Alright, I'm going to check in with these customers here. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. Your base coat sank into the folds, so the ridges are still black. I'm not sure I understand. Can you take a photo of that for me? Oh, I see. I see. Okay. Yeah. So, what are we looking at here? So this part right here, I don't know if that's showing up, if you can see the cursor, this is what we're looking for. So this positioning of the highlight is correct, okay, but it just needs to be bigger. This positioning of the highlight is okay down here, but you've pushed the paint in so far that you've painted the bottom of the ridge above.
Hey, Geoff.
Yeah.
Just for your feedback purposes, this isn't something I painted this way. My base coat was supposed to be an even coat and sank into the valleys, and that's what you're looking at. Almost like a
So
wash.
what? Okay, so that
I haven't
just
put a brush on this side of the brain at all.
okay. So then, so what color did you do this with?
That's a mix of pale violet red and violet red. I was trying to get close to
Okay, so
royal purple because I don't have anything
far
quite
far
right.
too light of a color. That's the problem. It was
Yeah.
far too light of a color. So what I would have
Yep.
used instead would have been something like burgundy wine mixed with pale red.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
no, burgundy wine mixed
Okay.
with red violet. Okay, the color that
Okay.
I'm using. I'm going to put them on the screen for you. Where we go in here? So there's the red violet, and the pale violet is close. It's close to the same color as the breast cancer pink. This is the royal purple,
Mhm.
right? It's a very, very dark color.
Yeah.
There's burgundy wine. So a combination of those two would be closer. And in fact, if I would use straight burgundy wine, just
Okay.
base coat the whole thing in straight burgundy wine and start again. So actually, burgundy wine on the top. See, the burgundy wine is darker than the blue ocean. So what color did you try to do like blue ocean and another color over top?
So the blue ocean I used, I also don't have blue ocean. So I darkened soft blue with a little bit of black. It was much closer to what you were using.
Okay,
The bottom
the
side of the
key
brain
is that
pretty dark blue.
whatever the blue is that you used should have been darker
Mhm.
than the red violet or the pink. Okay? But still,
Oh,
this needs to be a very dark paint.
I'll rebase coat the brain and start
Yeah,
working that.
I
I'll
would,
catch
because
up.
I don't think it's going to work for you, because now the way that that's fallen through, you'd be trying to do highlights on the ridges that are black and the black should be in the low spots.
You see my question now.
I do, I absolutely do, and so there's two things. First one is start with a darker paint, right? The second one is that when you get a result like that, where the color you intend as your base coat does not give base coat coverage, another coat, another complete coat, until you have complete coverage with your base coat. Otherwise, like the what you're trying to work with there is, if you think about the successive layers, right? You start with your base coat, and then we highlight with lighter colors on top of that, building up a pyramid of both, pigments and making the paint lighter, right? But essentially what you've done with your first layer is you've left a hole in the middle of the layer Whereas these are lighter now, this is dark, and you try to put light paint over the dark spot. And that dark spot will make the lighter paints darker than the paints beside it. So it inverts the process, and you don't get highlights. You get something that looks very, very flat. So yeah, you would do like literally the two thin coats thing, or in this case, because the red violet is a very transparent pigment, you would need maybe 2, 3, 4 coats with that red violet to get a solid coverage. That's why I go back to the burgundy wine. The burgundy wine gives very good coverage. So a combination of burgundy wine and a purple or a blue is going to give you a color that gives very good coverage. The pale violet has a lot of white filler, so it gives pretty good coverage as well, but the red violet pigment itself, sorry, I may not have been clear on that. Pale violet, Reaper pale violet, has white filler, so it's quite opaque and it covers well. The red violet, the pigment is transparent and it has virtually no filler in it at all. So it's a very transparent paint, by contrast to the burgundy wine. I hope that made sense.
It does, thank you.
It does. Okay, right on. Okay, excuse me for one sec, guys. I'll be back. And then his wife kicked him out and bought him his Christmas presents. So that took a bit longer than expected. I hope everybody is still with me and painting along. You guys are probably way ahead of me now. The burgundy wine looks really good, Belle the Cat. That's exactly the kind of color you want. And Canuck Wildling, that is looking... You are on the right track. Okay, so I am behind all of you, so I am going to rapidly do this now. I'm going to finish this layer of highlighting on the first layer of highlighting. And this is, I mean, if you're watching along what I'm doing, this gives you a sense of why quality brushes matter. This Winsor & Newton Series 7 size 2 brush, because it holds so much volume of paint, the tip on it is so good. I can just pretty much blitz through doing this very quickly, barely having to reload the paint as I go, and the brush is keeping its tip all the way through. Now this is an expensive brush, but the payoff is in the work that you can do with it. Ooh, Xiverius, that is looking creepy. I like it. Well done. Yeah, that was the full family paint visit experience there. The family had a little girl with them, and we have fairies hidden all over the studio. So she counted up all the fairies, and I thought there was only 14. She found 17, which was impressive. She found some in the cabinets that I hadn't really considered were part of the collection. And then she sat and colored a fairy. All the while Dad was browsing everything in the studio. And Mom got to sit and relax while her child was having a good time coloring. And then they did the thing that I like best at the end of a visit. They bought stuff, which helps me pay the rent. So we like that. I know that's very cynical and commercialistic of me, but it does help keep the doors open. And I can hear that my dog walker, aka my mother, is preparing to head back out again now that dog's been brought back from her adventure. There we go. So there's the first layer of highlighting on that done. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to grab some more of this breast cancer awareness pink, which is a lovely pink color. I really dig it. And now I'm going to do another layer of highlight using just this pink. So this pink is very saturated. It's really just like a sort of a high value, so a light magenta. And going over these same highlights again, okay, it's going to, because of this darker pink underneath, with this is, think about this as my mid-tone, yeah, Krang, my mid-tone pink, okay, or my mid-tone color. By having lots of this pink present, it's going to make these brain shapes really stand out. Like their volume will appear to be larger than it should. Not larger than it should, but larger than it is. Oh my gosh. So Heather is not painting the same figure we are. She is painting a grell. That is looking fab. I love it. Great big monstrous beast of a creature. Is it a grell or is it something different? Because that looks like an eyeball, not a beak. Doesn't matter. Whatever it is very, very cool. But this technique will definitely work on this as well. So I just would say that when you're painting the tops of these shapes, reach further in. Like this area right here, this is what you're looking for. You want to reach right in, almost to the base of the shape inside there. This is really good, leaving these dark shadows. But over the top, reach right in there, and that's going to give them, like, just, these already have a very high sculpted volume, but it's going to make the shape stand out even more. That's very cool. Thanks for showing me that. All right. I love it. A hive warden. Oh, that's a Reaper figure. Cool. I did not realize. Hive warden. All right. So let's keep doing. We're doing breast cancer pink. Breast cancer awareness pink. So where does this color come from? Reaper gives this color away for free every year in October. And if you order from Reaper online in that month, you will receive this paint in your order. And it is, yes, that is looking much, much better. The burgundy wine with, that looks like, I'm not sure what color over top of it, but that is looking really good. Yeah, you can see like the volume looks much better. Anyway, this breast cancer awareness pink is one of my favorite colors. And it's a little bit different every year. Some years it's more like the pale violet. Other years it's more like the runic glow pink paint. The one from a couple of years ago, which is the one I'm using right now, is almost like a fluorescent pink. It's very, very vivid. And it's going to make these brains really stick out. And you might think that having your brain stick out was a bad thing, but no, it's a good thing. Now, if you're putting like a pink color like this on and it doesn't show up as brightly as you would like, just repeat the brush stroke a couple of times in the same place. Like do it once, let it dry a little bit, See if it gets darker as it dries, and that paints all get darker as they dry. That doesn't necessarily mean that they stand out more, but they darken, and then you can judge after it's dry whether or not you need another layer of the same color. I think you can see that on this is starting to show up really, really well. Again, this is one of those minutes that's very hard to paint on camera. I kind of like the way that, like, I picked these minis to paint based on the fact that Reaper had given them away for free recently. I probably would not have painted this mini otherwise. And it doesn't really fit in any D&D campaigns I'm in. And it doesn't really fit in anything that I'm working on project-wise. But I'm quite enjoying the idea of like how to create those volumes and all these little shapes. And I feel like it's an exercise that will pay off in some other projects that I'm working on. Really interesting. Like compare this side, which has the second highlight, with that side, which does not. This side just has one highlight on it, and it looks, I don't know, looks a lot better to me. Now, the key going forward from this step is going to be that the highlights get placed in such a way that the highlight is closer in to like the body of the creature, not necessarily just like where the light would fall, because like these little shapes will cast a natural shadow down, like this shape casts a shadow down on that shape, but I still highlight all the way in right up to the base where the shadow starts. And the reason for that is that the natural shadow is going to darken these shapes a little bit. So we push the highlight right in against the base of where the shadow starts on the object above. And in that process, we also make sure we don't completely cover over the previous layer. So we're making big highlights right now that go all the way into the shadows. Well, as we go forward making the next layer of highlights, the highlights are going to get progressively smaller. We're still going to reach all the way in, and we want to make sure that the highlights do not completely cover the previous layer, because what happens if you completely cover the previous layer, and this pink midtone is what's giving the impression of a volume to the shape that we're highlighting. So even though your lighter highlight is on top, when you lose the midtone, everything starts to look gray and look flat. Okay, so we want to be careful not to completely cover the midtone in the next step. Why am I telling you that now? Because some people might be ahead of me and starting to think about their next highlight. And the next highlight color can be, there's a lot of ways we could go. We could go and we could use the rosy skin, or we could use some blue. If we were to mix that frosty blue into this, it's going to look grayer. If we use the rosy skin tone, the whole thing is going to look warmer and more alive. We also have the amethyst purple there, and the purple is well, I'm not quite 100% sure what it will do. The purple is a little bit colder than this magenta, so it's not going to like create super bright highlights. I think it'll make it look gray, and that could be interesting. So it's really a question of choices, right? Like, what do you want to choose to do next? I'm liking that. I mean, that's a finished brain creature as far as I'm concerned. Like, you can put that on your D&D table and your players would run screaming. But is that good enough? Do we really want the players to run screaming? No, we want the players to suffer like full aneurysms, right? So let's do this. Let's take the amethyst purple, or a similar. It's a desaturated purple, okay? But it's not. And it's a light purple, but it's not a high value purple. Okay, so I've got a few little shapes on the bottom of this that I didn't use very much pink on, and I'm going to highlight some of these with this purple. So just make their shapes a little bit more visible in the shadows. Because again, this purple is not particularly light. And it's not going to stand out as much as the pink does, because it doesn't have that color saturation that makes things look big and round. So just highlighting some of those shapes underneath. Excuse me. Just so they're a little bit more visible. Yeah, there's a few on the front that I couldn't get from the other angle. We'll do those ones. Is that big football game today? I imagine it must be. Canuck Wilding, that is looking good. Like it. I don't know how long ago you posted. Oh, you just posted that just now. That is looking good. I like it. Yeah. Hey, that's fine. You don't have to have the same colors. That's why I always just try to explain a bit of the color theory behind what I'm doing as we go, just so because if you know what you're doing when you're painting, you can make the colors that you need, right? Takes some time to get that experience, but it's definitely possible to do it. And that's why we try to do a process which is not product driven, it's technique driven. And that way you can paint your minis with any paint and any brushes you happen to have hanging around. You don't have to go and buy the particular thing that a particular company says that you must have. Okay, so now got this beautiful pink brain, and now I'm going to wreck it by I'm going to add some mid-tone, what is this, rosy skin, I'm going to add some rosy skin to the pink. And that's going to give me this sort of pale pink color. And this is the highlight color for one of the first highlight colors for the brain shapes. And again, when we do this now, we don't want to paint the whole shape again. So if I look at like this little whirl of brain here, we want to paint the bit closest to the top all the way into the crevice, but don't paint over the whole pink base coat. Now if you want, you can make this a series of like dots and lines, because if you think about these shapes in a real brain, they're actually not like tubes, they're like undulating ribbons, so they have their own like little internal folds and shapes to them. And if you feel like that, you can make them more complex by putting like little swirls and shapes on the top of them. The key thing though is, however you decide to do it, with a texture or just do it smoothly, make sure those highlights go all the way in. Okay, and don't see, like, look how strongly this contrasts now, because I didn't completely cover the pink, and it goes right up to the bottom of the shadow. That really stands out, even though there's a little bit of a texture on there. Another thing is, don't highlight everywhere. Yeah, there you go. Looking good. Don't highlight everywhere, okay? So, like on this piece of brain here, I didn't go all the way along it. I'm looking for cups and hills. So I'm going to highlight up to the base of a cup, and then do that little bit of extra highlighting on the crest of a hill to really make the shapes jump out. I often find that people enjoy the classes where I get distracted by customers more. And it's a funny thing, and I think it's because people can keep up more easily. And I know that I do tend to go very fast. And as I've said to you folks before, if you ask more questions, it slows me down. And that's usually a good thing. Amaryllis pink is too pink. Amaryllis pink is almost the same color as the breast cancer pink. What we want to do is desaturate the pink and lighten it. So you'd be better off to use just about any skin tone, like Caucasian or fair skin tone. So fair skin shadow is a good one. Tawny flesh, I think, might be a bit brown. But here's what we do. We take whatever pink you're using, and then look at some skin tone options that you've got on hand. So let me just grab like 10 skin tones. Here's a bunch of different, and I don't try to be like exclusive here, but in this particular case, I'm looking for different Caucasian skin tones because they're so orange, essentially. Okay, so here's a bunch of different skin tones, and here's my pink. So all of these skin tones will lighten this pink in a slightly different way. They're all going to desaturate it. Now, this one is a very, very saturated orange skin tone. That is, what is that? Vallejo Sunny Skin Tone. Okay? So that is going to really lighten this, but also going to really shift it towards yellow a lot. This is going to have more yellow and a little bit of magenta in it versus this being mostly magenta. This is going to turn this skin tone very orange. Okay? We don't want a bright orange brain. Maybe we do, but today we don't. This one, this is also an orange skin tone. What is this? This is burnt orange. Reaper burnt orange. This is going to lighten this, but not as much as some of the other skin tones, and it's going to shift it slightly towards yellow, but not as much as the sunny skin tone would. So this will also achieve the effect, but might still look a bit yellow. Then what have we got? What's this? Rosy skin versus new copper versus creamy ivory. All three of these on their own, right, are useful in skin tones. We use these all the time in these classes. The creamy ivory has just a little bit of yellow in it. It's mostly like white paint. Less white paint, more orange. So there's a little bit of blue, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of magenta in this skin tone. A lot of white filler, but not as much as there is in the creamy ivory. And the new copper is even more orangey. So depending on what we want to achieve with this, if we want this to be really, we want to desaturate it, but we don't necessarily want it to be gray. So for example, if I put this one in there, this is mostly white filler. That's going to really desaturate that quickly without adding much yellow. So it's going to lighten it, but not warm it up any. If I add that one to it, it's going to lighten it and warm it up a bit with yellow. So it's going to look less gray than if I did the same thing with the creamy ivory. I hope that makes sense. So you could use any color you want, as long as you kind of think about what is the effect of that color going to be on my midtone. And the short answer is always it's going to desaturate my midtone. The question is, what's that midtone going to look like afterwards? All right, see, you can slow me right down by asking me questions. Or I just make up a question and answer it for myself. Oh, dear. When in doubt, talk to yourself, right? What the hell is going on outside? Christmas season, holiday season has started, and there's a production company next door. So they're getting ready to run all kinds of Christmas parties and stuff for people. And some days it results in a lot of crashing and banging outside. Okay, so we're going to keep going and highlighting all these little brainy whirly bits. Again, keeping the focus towards the top. Don't cover the whole midtone. Yeah, I'm enjoying this class too. Like I said, I don't think I would have ever chosen to paint this brain of my own accord. And just goes to show that fun can come from surprising places. Has anybody heard if the miniature monthly painting competition has been announced yet? I really wasn't paying attention on that. Usually it has not. Okay, thanks, Heather. Can't be long now. I know they were still planning to do it when I last talked to them. Lots of new painters in the community. And it's been a year of people taking lots of interesting painting classes. So I'm very interested to see what they yeah, no, I appreciate that Aaron and Liz have been very busy. But I still look forward every year to see what people that are part of Miniature Monthly can do for painting. I must sadly admit that I did not enter last year. I really didn't have anything I felt like was my best work on hand last year. There we go. So there's that. What do you think, Heather? Should we just take it over and run the competition ourselves? I'm not putting up the $1,000 though. They can have. Oh, Heather's typing. Heather's got an idea. Could be trouble. You're also very busy. Okay, that's fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. All right. So let's turn this guy around and do same thing on the other side. Take on through to the other side. Wonder what's on the go that's keeping them all so busy right now. Must be studio painting. Aaron hasn't been putting out very many videos lately. I don't think he's put out a Patreon video in a while. Studio and commissions, yeah. Yep. And he's got tons of students. That takes up a big chunk of time. You have coaching with him tonight. Well, there you go. Hey, there we go. Again, smaller brush strokes though, right? You're starting to cover over too much with those brush strokes. They're a little bit too big. So much smaller brush strokes. Hey, right on. Keep going. Keep going there, Wildling Canuck. You're on the right track. Keep pushing it. My wife's been away in the UK for the last week, and so I've had the dog here with me at the studio every day. But she comes home tomorrow, so I know that my puppy is not going to want to hang out with me after her mom comes home. I go back to being here by myself again. Definitely more fun with somebody hanging out, even if that somebody is furry. She does. She really does. When we go away, the dog stays with my mother, and she loves taking care of her. The problem is that the dog is getting to be about 10 years old now, and she's turning into a grandmother herself. mostly in the behavior sense, for like older dogs get very set in their ways, and they need a very set routine, and the disruption doesn't make her very happy. So if we go away, the dog gets kind of not upset, but more depressed. She was a rescue dog, and I imagine that affects it as well. She wonders if she's been abandoned again when her mom goes away and leaves her for a week. Although this time of year is less popular to hang out with the dog because the dog wants to go outside for walks. And the weather has just turned quite cold here. I shouldn't say quite cold. It's only about, I don't know, it was -8 yesterday. But people aren't really acclimatized to it yet. So it's not super comfortable. There we go, a little bit of the brain thing happening there. All right. So we could do a bunch of different things. We could put purple spots. We can do purple shading. I don't know. I'm quite liking the way this brain looks at the moment. So, if you're a new painter, try to decide if your model is like done enough or good enough. One of the tricks that we use, that it's not my ideas, people call it the squint test, right? You kind of hold your model out at arm's length and kind of squint at it so you can't quite see it clearly. Can you still see all the shapes? Is it still clear? Another way to do it is I like to do it this way here. I'm going to point the camera down at the floor. Okay? Put the camera, or the figure out of the light. And then say, okay, can I still see the shapes when the figure's in the dark? Does everything still stand out clearly? And when I do that, I can kind of make out the brain. I can still kind of make out the little filamenty things on his legs. I can see the edges of the shapes in his legs, but things are not 100% clear anymore. So we've got a pretty good level of contrast there, but we could probably take things another level. So I think what I'm going to do something a little bit crazy. I feel like I want this brain to really like gleam. So I am going to put yellow into my pink. So what yellow should we grab? So I'm going to grab clear yellow. Oof, that's bright. You could use sun yellow, pale saffron, any kind of warm yellow. You could use ice yellow. I wouldn't really recommend ice yellow, or Reaper's ice yellow is called NMM Gold Highlight. I want a warm yellow though. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that warm yellow and put it in my palette. Let me give you the palette view here. There's the yellow. So what I want to do is I want to make certain parts of that brain really gleam, stand out really, really strong. So here's my mix that is breast cancer awareness pink. See you again next time there, Belle the cat. I'm going to add a bit more. I want some more skin tone on the palette, so I've been using rosy skin. There we go. So I've already added quite a lot of rosy skin. I'm going to add some more rosy skin to the mix, but I'm also going to add a bit of this yellow. Now this yellow has a lot of white filler in it, and it's not going to do a huge amount to the mix initially. Okay, but what it did do is it really, really warmed it up. Like, it's just in the palette, it is noticeably warmer. And the effect of that, there we go, that's what I'm looking for, on the miniature is quite strong. It really makes those elements that I'm going to Now it's getting a bit dark, so I'm going to add a little bit of white to lighten it up again. It's going to really make those little elements that get this bit of yellow, it's going to make them stand out quite a lot. So what do I want out of this paint? I want this paint to be higher value than the previous layer, so lighter. I want it to have some yellow in it so that you get that psychological effect of things that are warmer standing out more. And I want it to essentially be a reasonable highlight color on the previous pink color. So this color should work as like little marks of highlight. That's exactly what I wanted. There we go. It's, oh, sorry, looking at the wrong view. There we go. Canyon spot where I just put that highlight. It's really, really obvious, right? Like it really just made that spot leap out. And that's the effect of the yellow in the mix. It doesn't take much yellow. Yellow is very powerful on the figure. It doesn't look like it does much to the paint in your palette, but when it dries on the figure, it's really powerful. So it doesn't take much to really make a shape just like look what it's doing to those shapes. Now these highlights need to be really small. And that's because I don't want to wipe out my midtone. And having these small highlights is actually going to make the brain look a little bit wet as well. The small highlights are going to read as a little bit glisteny. There's your word for the day, glisten. Okay, look at that. Really making that stand out. So to get the best effect from this, we want to make sure we've got we can apply the paint with care and precisely. So you want to make sure you've got a brush big enough to hold a nice volume of paint and with a really good point on it. So the volume of paint keeps the paint from drying out in the brush too quickly. And a sharp point means you can put the paint where you need it to be. So how do we make sure we've got that? A little bit more beginner information for you. We clean out the brush and we just gently wiggle the brush in there. And we gently draw the brush along our paper towel. I'm not mashing it in there. Gently drawing it along so that I get my point back on my brush. Okay? Now, the paper towel that I'm drawing this on is soaking wet. So it doesn't dry off the brush. Okay? It just takes most of the moisture out of it. Then I load up my brush, roll the tip of the brush in that paint, and because there's a little bit of moisture left in the brush, the paint is not going to dry out. Just use that wet paper towel to fix the point on there. And now when I go back to the miniature, I've got a well-loaded brush, good point on it. The paint's not going to dry out quickly. I've got time to work, and it's going to have a sharp point on it. And there's that nice sharp point that I wanted. And there's my nice wet flowing paint. And we're going to make this creepy brain. Give it a little bit of a glisten of wetness. A glisten of wetness. I always find myself partway through these classes asking myself, who sculpted this many anyway? Does anybody remember? I'll have to look it up. I'm really liking it. Feels like I don't want to guess. Let's look it up. Let's check. Patrick Keith. I would not have guessed that. But I guess with all the counterblast stuff, he does a lot of these brains and things. I just painted a Patrick Keith thing earlier this week. I did a Bombshell Miniatures Tara the Sword Mistress bust. The Blade Mistress or something she's called. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed painting that. So lots of little highlights, highlighting the curves and shapes. Yeah, this actually, now that I think about it, this does feel like a counterblast style sort of alien. Counterblast is the game put out by Patrick Keith's company, Bombshell Miniatures. One of my favorite sculptors. Well, I'm glad I didn't guess at who sculpted this, because I would have guessed wrong. All right, let's see where we're at. Oh, thank you, Heather. Appreciate that. I had a lot of help. All right, so I want to bring back some of the lines on the other parts of the body. So I'm going to take the blue indigo that I put on there earlier, a black indigo that I put on the palette earlier. I'm going to add a bit of blue ocean or deep ocean into that. And this is going to be my liner. Now, you might find that it's not thin enough. I put that on there deliberately so that it would get some more water, and it seems to have thickened up a little bit. It's a bit drier here today than I was expecting. All right, so I'm going to add a little tiny bit of flow improver just to kind of keep that paint mobile. So the flow improver will act as a slight retardant. It will slow the drying time, and that will make it easier for us to paint in the dark lines. All right, and now anywhere that two surfaces meet, I want to paint this line. So this guy looks like he's wearing a bit of a pair of shorts, right? So underneath that line of the pair of shorts there, we want to paint a line of this dark color. And that'll make the shape stand out a little bit better in between these different bits of carapace. Nice to see you there, Dodge. We'll see you next time. There we go. Just bring back the definition of all these shapes a little bit. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. And I think the last thing I want to do, just for fun, I feel like the body could use a little bit more color. So I'm going to use the royal purple, or whatever purple or purpley red or whatever color you're using. The red violet we were talking about earlier would work. But what I'm going to do with this color is on the carapace where the color's not very interesting. So not in the shadow zone and not in the area where I've already got all these dots, but kind of on the lower edge of that. I'm going to put just a few of these dark purple dots in. So I'm putting these in the areas that already contain paint of a similar value. These areas are already quite dark. But all I'm doing by doing this is adding a little bit of color variation, making it a little bit more visually appealing. And just put some purple dots in the edge of that space, kind of in the boundary layer between the shadow and the highlight. And it's okay if one or two of your dots creep up a little bit too high and overlap some of your earlier highlight dots. That's not a big deal. But don't like completely cover them over. Are those visible? Okay, I'm just going to play with the focus. And now I'm going to play with the color balance. And I'm just warning you, this is going to be a little bit extreme. See if we can get those dots to show up. A little bit. So the dots are all along in there. Okay, you can just about make them out. They're not super obvious, but they do add a lot of interesting color variety. Alright, let's put that back so people don't think they're having a seizure. It's funny, even though the area around her or around this guy on the screen looked bright red and weird colors, the color of the miniature was actually closer to what it looks like in my hand. Camera doesn't really capture the subtle color variety all that well. Alright, I feel like that's just about it for this figure. No, I left out one joint there, needs a bit more of a dark color in it. Right there. There we go. Alright, so that's all that's left to do is the base. And you could paint this base however you want. You could do gray or blue or stone or whatever you like. What I like to do is to just take the palette and kind of make a mix of different colors to make a gray. And then I dab that all over the base. So here's a purpley gray, green, blue, pink, gray color. And we'll kind of dab that in spots all over the base. So we can do something interesting with the base, but without introducing radical new colors that are already in the palette. Don't want the base to draw attention away from the figure itself too much. Bit of a here and there dabbing of different colors. Sort of this very neutral gray color. we go. And I can lighten that with a bit of blue, maybe. Bit of white, whatever. Just throw a bunch of lighter colors in there. Make another gray. And that gray I'm going to use to do a bit of an edge highlight around all these different shapes on the base, these little rocks and things. And I don't mean like a perfect, smooth, consistent edge highlight. I mean make it look like it's been smashed up with an axe or a hammer or something. Chip up the different shapes, just hint at them rather than precisely edge highlight them. So make the base interesting, but without creating something that draws away from your figure. You want to enhance the overall look of the figure without taking over. There we go. Now, I mean, there's a lot of different philosophies in how to base minis. This is just one idea. Some people like to make a base which is just over the top cool. I know people that put more effort into painting the base than they put into painting the mini. And it's all fair. It's just a question of what is it you want to get out of. What do you want out of the figure? If you want, you know, say you're painting for a competition and you want the figure to be really visible, so you want to use the color theory to enhance the overall look of the figure. So maybe you're going to choose, you know, a kicker color that's going to make something on the model stand out more. Or maybe you want, there's some element of the story about this mini that's not really clear from the miniature itself. So you want to put that on the base, maybe almost like the base is a diorama. Well, there's lots of different approaches to it. I think, no, the camera makes this base stand out more than it should, but this is just a nice mildly colored base. Very neutral, few details picked out here and there, and it makes the miniature look better. We could actually maybe mix some of the blue and purple together, which is going to give us this weird sort of lighter indigo color. And we could do a few little bits of chips and damage on the stones. Add a little bit more of interesting color in there. Give the legs a little bit of shadow. Add some indigo shadow in some of these cracks. There we go. A few more little chips and dashes and marks and stuff. Could do a little bit of a wash of a color in here as well. Could glaze in some purple. We can do whatever you want, you know. But my feeling is that you don't want the, oh gosh, that eye, like that's looking fabulous, Heather. Really good. What about like a creepy eye that has two irises? It's looking good. I'm digging it. Throw some splotches of purple on the vase. I feel like this base needs some orange, but I don't really want to put it on there. There. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. That feels like a finished figure to me. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Or like a toad eye with that weird, like infinity shaped iris, but like turn it sideways. So like he's looking through instead of like you know how frogs have like their eye can see above and below the water at the same time. Maybe that guy's looking like left and right through two dimensions at the same time. Like, oh, I don't know. There's so many different ways you could do it. It's a cool looking figure.